Internet of Things is a network of physical things or objects that use sensors, software, and other technologies for the purpose of connecting and exchanging data with other devices and systems over the Internet. Depending on what kind of device, it can impact us on all fronts: social, ethical, legal, and economic. In our efforts to become a smart nation, we will have more and more of these devices. Any issues? Rose Barker, an American entrepreneur, explains.
Next up, we'll look at issues associated with Internet of Things, which is the widespread use of smart devices. Singapore is known as a smart nation. What does this mean? It means that a lot of our infrastructures has smart capabilities, whereby they're embedded with sensors, with devices that enables network connection. Okay, and this will actually amass a lot of real-time physical information, a lot of data for us to make better informed decisions. Okay, and of course, automation comes in with IoT. Okay, and of course, here I have two examples right there. Bottom one being some common smart home automation devices that you have there. Okay, that allows for automation and control using the Internet of Things. On top here, you can see there's this motorcycle helmet. In fact, this is not just an ordinary helmet. This is known as a smart helmet. It has basically embedded sensors and capabilities to connect to the Internet to fetch real-time information and data on, let's say, the traffic conditions. It also has built-in cameras and such, which can detect, blind spots and stuff like that, and to alert the riders if there is any danger. Right? You can actually click on the hyperlink to read up more. So IoT is a phenomenon that, has been around since. It is widespread. And yes, it brought a lot of convenience to our everyday lives with the, added automation, optimization that comes in with IoT. The trend, of the global share of IoT projects, take a look at this, right? In fact, they are everywhere. We adopt IoT in a lot of aspects, mainly in building a smart city, and of course, in your factories and industries, they are widely used in the automation and optimization processes. With this massive amount of data transmitted over the network, right? Because as you know, IoT devices basically transmits a lot of physical real-time data and fetch those as well. What are some concerns you might have? You might have as an individual consumer of IoT devices. As much as it brought a lot of benefits, we need to acknowledge that IoT also brought a lot of threats in our daily lives as well. One example of a threat is, of course, with regards to security. Okay, as you know that now there are a lot of IoT devices lying around. They have the capability to, scan real-time information and to transmit it over the Internet. This becomes a source of vulnerability. Okay, in fact, there are a lot of exploitation attempts that were made through all these IoT devices to get onto networks and systems. So let's take a look at this video on whether smart devices are helping or harming us.
When we added MDMA,
What will you do?
went up to 61%.
Hell yes.
But I saw a bird that morning. You made the first blues in 200 years.
A few weeks ago, I went to the grocery store and quickly realized I'd left my shopping list at home. No big deal. I just pulled out my smartphone fridge app and quickly found my grocery list. How would you feel if some hacker across the country knew what brand of milk that you buy, or if you're really being faithful to your paleo diet? Probably wouldn't care very much. But what if that hacker were also a thief? And they used your smartphone fridge app to gain access to your entire phone. This actually happened, by the way, through a refrigerator. And they got your Gmail login and password. They started sending spam emails to your family and friends. They got access to all of your apps, online passwords, accounts. They've drained your bank account. And you have no way to regain your privacy. Unfortunately, this situation is all too real for many Americans today. Quick show of hands. How many of you here have a login and password for an online account? Great, glad you're here, because this TED Talk applies to you. These smart devices, technically called Internet of Things devices, or IoT for short, are generally defined as devices that have network connectivity. They collect user data, process and analyze that data, and then return it back to the user. This is an image of a typical American's Internet of Things usage. We own many devices, and most are connected back to a central device, like a smartphone or a laptop, that we're going to call the anchor device. Internet of Things devices could be your thermostat, your baby monitor, your car's Bluetooth phone system, your Roomba, a Fitbit. There's even a pet sitting app that allows you to watch your pets while you're not at home. And you can toss your puppy a treat with the tap of an app. But here's the thing. If a hacker can gain access to just one of your Internet of Things devices, oftentimes they can access all of your devices. First, they access the anchor device, hack that, and then they've got everything that's hosted on your anchor device. And usually they can even commit crimes remotely from your hacked devices. Gartner, the leader in IT research, says that there are 8 billion IoT devices in 2017, and that we're on track for 20 billion devices in 2020. That's in just 2 years. As time passes, this technology is transitioning from being what was an optional luxury feature to being baseline, default in every device, and we're forced to buy it and integrate it into our lives. I'd like to back up a couple of steps and say this. I am a fairly typical user of technology. I like Facebook. I love Amazon. I run an Instagram account for my dog named Foxy. And I rely on my smartphone for just about everything. I believe technology is beneficial. It saves time, it's reliable, and I feel safe traveling all over the world alone because of it. For the last 3 years, I've served as a contractor. I train individuals and companies on tactics that thieves use to steal identities and to breach companies, on what to do when it does happen to you, and on how to avoid it from happening in the first place. And after every single presentation, someone who has had their identity stolen quietly approaches me and tells me about the disastrous effect it's had on their personal life. Identity theft takes hundreds of hours to clean up. It's emotionally draining, and it leaves people feeling vulnerable. What we as consumers don't understand is how deep this rabbit hole goes. What most people don't realize is just how deeply identity theft can affect your personal life. I see this as an epidemic of tremendous proportions. We are a database society, and every day you are more likely to have your identity stolen. The Equifax data breach in the fall of 2017 was the worst the world has ever seen. Companies and thieves are making money off of every kind of personal information you can imagine. Essentially, data is the new oil. Data trafficking is one of the top revenue-generating crimes in the world internationally, and the problem is just getting worse. And you're going to continue to hear from the risk management industry that data breaches like Equifax and Uber and Alteryx and whatever tomorrow's data breach is only the tip of the iceberg. The problem is just getting worse. There's just too much money to be made from identity theft. And Americans are realizing that it can affect the most intimate parts of their lives. Speaking of intimacy, there's even a smart vibrator. You can give your partner control of your device in almost any way that you can imagine, which is certainly a personalized way of using technology to stay in touch. But that company chose to sell their users' data without their clients' knowledge or consent. And while they say the sale did not include full names or usernames, the clients still felt violated. It crossed the line from what was impersonal appliance data usage to what was a violation of personal privacy. I'd like to pause and show you just how easy it is to access an unsecured device. Here's a website open and available to the public with all kinds of devices that are connected online. There's 72,000 cameras. Some of these have passwords, some of them don't. Here's an example of a feed you might find. We think that if we buy an Internet of Things device, like a light bulb, or a thermostat, or a baby monitor, that that object is ours, and whatever we do with it is ours. Here's the thinking error. The data that we think is private is intentionally sold by companies or hacked by thieves, and that information that we thought was private is now public or available on the dark web. There are no regulations on almost any consumer devices or the data that they collect. Currently, companies don't have to tell us what data they're collecting, who they're selling it to, what third-party companies they are sharing our information with, how they're storing our information. Most don't even have to tell us when they or their partner software companies have been hacked. And that information that we thought was private is now public. The bottom line is this: we have no clue what information is being sold and who is buying, selling, and stealing it. Now, in my risk management dream world, I'd advocate that the information that's collected by a device also be owned by the person who purchased that device. So software and hardware companies might store that information for us, but they have no legal grounds to sell or transfer that information. At very least, we ought to have the right to opt out of a company collecting our information and sharing it with others. But I don't think that's realistic in today's world, where net neutrality is on the chopping block. Some of these companies are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars lobbying Congress to reduce regulations on data security. We must employ measures to ensure that our identities remain uniquely ours. For those of you who have already done your homework on risk management and data security, eventually blockchain technology developed by the Bitcoin world will become widespread. And eventually, it will be more difficult for a hacker to gain access to our personal data. But until then, most companies won't take sufficient measures to protect us as consumers unless they know they're going to lose money or credibility. We must recognize and reject what these companies are trying to do and buy our technology accordingly. And we must support public movements and legislation that strengthen our rights as device owners. A general guideline on whether or not to trust a company or a device is the less the device and its software cost, the less the company is going to earn. Therefore, the less motive they have to protect you and the greater risk you're taking when purchasing that device. The major impact of identity theft isn't finding out that your bank account has been drained or that someone has filed your income tax report before you do. It's the time and energy it takes to clean up the mess of identity theft. What can we do now, at home? Weak wireless connections and passwords are often easy targets to hackers. Update your devices with complex passwords. When you're using free Wi-Fi in public, make sure that it's password protected and that you're connected to the correct network. If you accidentally log into a fake network, a thief can see and record everything that you're doing. Read reviews before buying new devices and downloading new apps. And when an app or software asks you to update, update immediately. Avoid linking accounts and devices to your anchor device unless you are sure that it will save you time or money, and you're okay knowing that all of the data that it collects could become public. Lastly, purchase identity theft coverage with comprehensive restoration so you aren't stuck figuring out how to restore your own identity. I told a fib earlier. I don't own a smart fridge, and I hope that I'm never forced to. When you're considering buying and connecting a new device, please weigh the costs and benefits. Ask yourself, is it really worth it to have a smartphone fridge app to see your grocery list if you could lose your most valuable possession, and that is your identity? Thank you.
So in Japan, okay, the government actually hacks their own citizens to find out about, how well they secure their IoT devices to test the vulnerability of their IoT systems, okay, across the nation. So is this, the best way to educate their citizens on the importance of ensuring and safeguarding their security over, IoT devices? It's for you to think about, right? Some big questions here. How can we, as consumers, right, as users of IoT devices, safeguard ourselves? And how can we use IoT in a responsible manner? What are some of your guiding principles?
In the previous video, we explored the many issues of IoT devices. The points she made are applicable to the Singapore context, exactly the same points used in the CNA article here. With many IoT devices, we may be introducing new vulnerabilities and opening up to new threats. This article is about Defense Cyber Organization, MINDEF's defense against cyber attacks. The next war could be in cyberspace. Every day, MINDEF is being targeted by attacks that could be from cyber warfare agencies or foreign governments. And with IoT devices, it opens up more vulnerabilities that can bring down critical infrastructures. It is becoming a national issue. In Japan, officials will start probing 200 million IP addresses linked to the country to check for devices with poor or little security. We know the problem is very serious when the nation starts taking actions like this. These are a summary of points you can use to analyze a scenario. You should be able to explain how computing can make things more efficient, identify possible scenarios where sensitive information can be copied easily, question the data collection process, analyze if there was customer consent, check who has access to what data, be inclusive and fair to all customers whether they are digital literate or not, engage in fair business practices and price control, show awareness of cybersecurity, check if a code of conduct is needed for employees and third-party vendors. For example, an insurance business uses a combination of hard copy documents before 2011 and database from 2011 onwards to store customer details and insurance policies purchased. Data entry assistants, DEA, are hired for a 6-month contract to help the business digitize information from the old files to the existing database. Can you pick out what are the positive impacts and possible issues that need to be raised? This will be the end of the presentation. You can pause the video and spend some time to think of relevant answers to this scenario.